The sky over Dustwood was super pale, like a bone left in the sun. The noon sun was so hot, it made the town feel crispy. Dust floated like old smoke between the crooked boards of the auction pen, tickling everyone's throats. People stood around farmers, in worn-out boots, traders with lots of money but not much kindness, and kids too young to understand why their moms were crying. Behind the fence, a goat with a cut nibbled on a piece of torn cloth. Far away, a windmill squeaked like an old man telling secrets to the breeze. Emma stood by the pen, her shawl too thin for the chilly fall air, her shoes all cracked. One arm hugged the little girl next to her, and the other held a small bag with everything they owned. 2 old dresses, a silver comb missing a tooth, and a ribbon her daughter once tied on a kitten's neck before mean neighbors killed it for fun. Her girl was 6, with dusty brown curls and green eyes that looked tired from too many hungry nights. She didn't cry anymore. She just held her mom's skirt like it was the only thing she could trust. The auctioneer's voice snapped through, the heat like a loud whip. Next up, a small girl, 6 years old, strong arms, quiet, doesn't eat much. Take her from her mom. Emma's voice was rough as she stepped forward. Please, sir, I'm begging. Let me keep her. I'll work, clean, cook. Take us both. We won't cause trouble. We just need a home. The crowd shuffled. Some whispered. One man laughed meanly and spit near her feet. Another man, skinny with yellow teeth and a fancy coat, lazily raised a gloved hand. $2 for the girl. Emma almost fell, her knees wobbly, but she stayed up. Her daughter held tighter. Please don't split us up. Please. The auctioneer didn't look at her, just nodded at the raised hand. $2. Anyone offer 3? Another hand went up, fat fingers with a gold ring. A man with cheeks like bruised apples and a smooth voice said, $3.50. Emma cried. She's just a baby. She needs me. I'll work double. Don't take her. The crowd looked away, some embarrassed, some bored. One woman shook her head, like Emma caused her own trouble by still being there, still hoping. Then a voice cut through the dust and noise. Not loud, not begging, just calm. I'll take both of them. Everyone turned. He was tall, with broad shoulders under a simple shirt, dusty pants, a thick belt, and a hat held politely in one rough hand. His other hand rested on a post near a calm horse that stomped once but stopped when he spoke. The man looked right at Emma, not the girl, not the bidders, just her. Her breath got stuck. The auctioneer blinked. Sir, that's not how it works. I'm not asking how it works, the man said. I'm paying for both. The crowd murmured again. Someone whispered, that's George Mercer, the widower. Emma heard it, and the name felt familiar, but she didn't know why. George stepped forward, pulled out a money pouch from his coat, and handed it over without arguing or naming a price. The auctioneer took it without checking it. Something about George's eyes made people forget their greed. Okay, sold, woman. And girl, next up. Emma hadn't moved. George turned to her softly. Come on. She hugged her daughter tighter. I don't have anything, sir. No money, no trade. I'm not trading, he said. I'm giving you a home? A long quiet followed, like standing between 2 big cliffs. Her daughter whispered, her voice dry and soft. Mama, can we go now? Emma looked at her, then at George. In that moment, with the sun cutting through the dust like a warm hug, she saw no pity in his eyes, just steady kindness. She nodded. George picked up the girl first, holding her gently, like someone who knew how to hold a child from long ago. Then he gave his coat to Emma. She paused for a second before taking it, its warmth surprising against her cold skin. They walked to his wagon, together. They didn't talk, but something quiet passed between them, something old, like the calm before rain. Behind them, the crowd broke up. The man with the gold ring grumbled and turned away. A woman made a cross sign. The wind blew, carrying dust and whispers and things too special for words. At the wagon, George helped the girl into the back where hay was piled neatly. He gave her a piece of dried apple from his pocket, then turned to Emma. There's water in the jug, he said, and bread wrapped in cloth. It's not much, but it's real. Emma nodded, her lips shaky. Why'd you do it? He looked at her. Because No one else did. She wanted to cry, but the tears didn't come yet. Not until safety felt true. Not until hope stopped feeling like a trick. She climbed into the wagon beside her daughter. George got up on the driver's seat, took the reins, and without another word, flicked them gently. The wagon moved forward. They passed the edge of town, wooden signs creaking. The church bell cracked but quiet. The tavern was still full of men too drunk to notice something good passing by. Emma looked back at Dustwood once, just once, then faced forward toward the hills, toward the road, toward something she didn't have a name for yet. She didn't know what was ahead, but she wasn't for sale anymore. And the man driving didn't look back. He just kept going steady, like someone who knew real love wasn't loud, just showing up when it mattered most. The wind got softer outside Dustwood, less mean somehow, though it still tugged at Emma's dress like a kid not ready to let go. The wagon rolled along a twisty path through hills covered in dry grass, sloping toward a quiet only found far from people's opinions. Emma sat in the back, her daughter snuggled against her. The man named George, quiet at the reins. His shoulders were strong, like he'd faced storms and sadness without bending. They reached the ranch by evening. It wasn't fancy, not painted, just a big, weathered cabin with 2 chimneys, a small barn, a chicken coop with a crooked door, and a well that groaned when the wind pushed it. But it was solid, and it was his. And that made Emma feel both hopeful and scared, like walking into a home she didn't think she deserved. He helped them down gently, not wasting words. The girl, Lahi, watched him with big, unsure eyes. Emma noticed little things first. The porch was swept clean. A horseshoe was nailed above the door. A fire was already burning, sending smoke into the cooling sky. Someone had built this place with hands that cared about safety, not just walls. Inside, it smelled like pine and something baked, though faint now. A small table with 3 chairs sat near the fireplace. A tin kettle rested by the coals. There were warm but shiny boots by the door, a rifle on the wall, and on a shelf, almost hidden behind a jar of dried lavender, a small carved horse with a broken tail. George opened a cupboard and got 2 bowls, pouring hot water into one, then adding oats. "You eat first," he said. "I'll have coffee." Emma shook her head. "We can wait. We're used to it." He looked at her, his eyes calm. "No more waiting." She nodded. The 3 sat at the table, Lahi's legs swinging, her fingers too tired to hold the spoon steady. George gave her bread instead, then stirred the fire like it was more important than watching them eat. When they finished, he showed them a small loft upstairs, with 1 bed of straw and clean sheets, and a blanket folded nearby. "You'll be warm here," he said. "I'll sleep downstairs." Emma touched the railing. "You don't have to give us." "I do," he said. That night, Emma lay awake. Lahi curled against her chest. The fire's light flickered from below, making shadows dance on the ceiling like slow ghosts. She heard George's boots by the fireplace, moving carefully, like he didn't want to wake old memories in the house. In the morning, he was gone, before the sun came up. A note sat on the table in messy writing. "Bread's in the tin. Cow needs milking if you know how. Eggs under the red hen. Back by noon." She held the note longer than she needed to. Being trusted to stay felt special. She lit the fire, got eggs, burned her hands a little on the stove, and mumbled a curse until Lahi giggled for the first time in weeks. At noon, George came back with 2 sacks over his shoulder, flour and nails. His forehead was sweaty, his hat dusty. He smelled like wood and roads. He didn't ask about the morning, just saw the fire burning, nodded once, and said he'd fix a crooked board on the porch. Their days found a pattern. George never asked questions. Never asked why Emma ended up at an auction. Never asked about Lahi's dad. He just gave them space, safety, a place where her voice could come back without fear. Still, Emma felt Dustwood's stares. When she rode into town for thread or salt on George's old mule, wearing his wife's old cloak, people whispered. One shopkeeper mumbled, "Another mouth he feeds, huh?" while counting coins. Emma didn't answer. just left the beans she couldn't afford and walked out before her anger got her in trouble. She told George that night. He didn't say anything at first, just sipped his coffee, jaw tight. Then he said, "You're not someone folks get to judge." "I feel like a burden," she whispered. "You're a woman raising a kid in a world that's never fair." "That's not a burden. That's brave." Emma looked away, but something inside her opened quietly. Days passed. Lahi slept through the night again. The shadows under Emma's eyes faded. She started humming softly when sweeping or peeling potatoes. One evening, after fixing a tear in George's shirt, she left it on the chair by the fire. He looked at it, then at her. "Didn't ask you to sew." "I know. Thank you." She smiled. Their eyes met longer than usual, and something soft passed between them, but it didn't last. A week later, at dusk, someone knocked. An older man with gray hair and a preacher's coat on a brown horse smiled too big. "Evening, George. Heard you've got company." George stood quiet on the porch, hand on the doorframe. Emma stood behind, Lahi holding her skirt. The preacher leaned forward. "Well, look, it's Emma Cartwright. Didn't expect to see you again, girl. Thought the debts would have taken you west or worse." George's voice was cold. "She's here now." The preacher smirked. "She's got a name that brings trouble. And I've got a hammer," George said, calm. The man blinked twice, tugged his horse, and rode off, muttering prayers. That night, Emma didn't talk, just sewed by the fire, hands shaking. George poured 2 mugs of coffee, set one near her, and waited. Finally, she said, "He's not wrong. My husband drank everything away, left us with debts and shame." George stared at the fire. "That doesn't make you guilty. People will say you were foolish to take us." "I don't listen to people." Emma looked at him, and for the first time since coming, she didn't look away. "I can leave. I never asked you to." The quiet between them felt heavy, like something big neither could name yet. Not love, not yet, but kindness that felt like it. She stood, took her mug, and sat beside him, not across, not apart, beside. Lahi stirred in her sleep. The wind howled outside, and inside the little cabin, the 3 of them were like coals in a fireplace, glowing softly, waiting to burn brighter. And Emma, for the first time in forever, didn't wait for something bad to happen. She just leaned closer, just a little, enough. Spring came quietly, not loud, with soft ground and melting snow dripping from the roof. The creek behind George's cabin, frozen before, started to whisper again. Little purple flowers poked through the cold dirt. And in that quiet change, something started growing between Emma and George. Something gentle, hidden, and ready to bloom. The cabin felt alive now. Lahi's laughter was like bird songs. She chased chickens, named the old cow Millie, and sang her mom's old songs while brushing dust off the porch. Emma took over the kitchen with quiet pride. George didn't say much, but he stayed longer there, watching her roll dough, measure beans or cut apples with a shiny knife. Sometimes he offered a chair, sometimes a word about the weather, but mostly it was just quiet together, understanding each other without trying too hard. Their hands passed things, tools, bread, and those little touches started to mean more than words. There was no hurry, no big promises, just 2 people learning not to be scared anymore. One morning, George brought her boots, sturdy, a bit worn, but good. He polished them himself. Emma looked at them, then at him. "They were hers," he said softly. "Too big for the girl. Thought they'd keep you warmer." Emma touched the laces. "You sure?" He nodded. She didn't ask about the woman before. Some sadness didn't need explaining, just respect. In town, gossip spread like a flood. Some people stopped talking when Emma passed. Others didn't bother whispering. "She's using him. He'll regret it. She's no good." George said nothing. But when he stood by her at the store, like a shield, she felt stronger. One day, Lahi tripped while getting eggs and scraped her knee. She cried, not from pain, but fear. Emma ran to her, but George was already there, picking her up. He spoke, so softly it surprised Emma. "That's a good cut, little one. You're getting tough." Lahi sniffled into his shoulder. Emma watched him wrap the knee with a clean cloth. When he looked at her, something felt like a promise, quiet but strong. That night, George carved a tiny wooden horse and left it on Lahi's pillow. She hugged it in her sleep. Emma felt too much, standing between safety and wanting. It scared her. She'd trusted before, lost before, been left with nothing before. The one evening, George came in from the barn, muddy boots, shirt smelling of horses and smoke. Emma stirred stew at the stove. Lahi was asleep. George sat, watching her move, hearing her hum without knowing it. Emma served his stew, then paused. "Do you ever think about—" She stopped. He set down his spoon. "About what? About what this is?" The quiet wasn't heavy, just thoughtful. "I think," he said, "it's something good." She looked at him, scared and soft. "But is it right?" He held her gaze. "It's not wrong." She sat across from him, unsure what to do with her hands. "You don't have to feel anything for me. I know what people say." "Let them," George said. Emma looked down. "But do you?" George was quiet, then spoke like he was saying something he held for a long time. "I feel peace when you're near." Tears came to her eyes. She looked away, nodding softly. Later that week, Emma rode to town alone. George made her take the mule, said it was safer. She wore her own shawl, a dress she'd sewn, and the boots he gave her. When she came back, a little boy from a nearby ranch followed, his face dirty. "He hasn't eaten in 2 days," she said quietly. George didn't wait. He brought water and biscuits, set the boy by the fire, and later rode to the boy's family to fix things. When he came back, he handed Emma a blue ribbon, like the one Lahi used to have. "Found it by the fence," he said. "Thought it was yours." She took it, hand shaking. That night, after Lahi slept, Emma stepped outside. George stood by the corral, lantern swinging in the breeze. She walked to him slowly. "I don't know how to say what I need to." He turned, eyes soft in the light. "You don't have to." "I want to." George waited. Emma looked at the stars, then at him. "I was scared you wanted to own me. I never did. I know that now." She stepped closer. "You never took. You only gave." He lowered his head. "I didn't do much. You gave me the kind of quiet that lets me breathe." He looked at her, really looked, and her hands reached for his before she could think. "I don't know if I'm ready to be anything again," she whispered. "That's okay," George said. "We can be nothing together until something grows." Her breath caught, and then, so soft, she said, "I think something already has." The wind moved, the wind, trees. An owl hooted. The land held its breath. They stood there a long time, two people learning to trust the quiet between them. Emma glanced at the loft window, where Lahi watched with big, hopeful eyes. She smiled. George offered his hand. Not to pull, not to lead, just to walk beside her. She took it, and the moon rose slowly, silver and calm, like it was watching. Spring turned into blooming. The land, once hard and cold, now stretched wide under bright blue skies. Wind moved tall grasses in whispers, and birds came back to George's porch. The quiet between Emma and George wasn't empty anymore, but full, like the moment before a big question. Days got longer. Emma planted flowers by the porch, digging in the soft dirt. Lahi helped, making rows and naming each flower. George passed by with firewood or nails, just watching. He didn't interrupt, but sometimes he smiled or touched Lahi's head, like he was keeping her safe. That spring, Emma sewed curtains for the loft window and patched their quilt. She folded George's shirts, not because she had to, but because it felt good to care for the home that held her sadness without asking for anything. And George started carving against small animals, a fox, a crow, then a pine cradle, though no one said why. Emma found it in the barn one morning covered with cloth. She didn't ask, just touched its smooth edge and whispered a thank you to no one. But something stayed unsaid. Not fear, not cold, but knowing that real love had to be said out loud, not just shown in quiet ways. One Sunday, they rode to town as a family. George wore a clean white shirt. Emma's dress was sky blue, her bonnet with faded lace. Lahi sat, Between them, holding her mom's hand. The church bell rang slow, like an old man coughing. They sat in the back pew. People whispered. Emma held her head high, but her stomach twisted. Her hands shook as she fixed Lahi's skirt. When the last song ended, she stood to leave fast, but George offered his arm, not just to be polite, but to show he chose her. She took it. They walked past curious eyes with the calm of two people who'd faced worse than gossip. Outside, some people nodded nicely. One old lady smiled, but others stared. One man said something mean under his breath. Emma flinched. George heard, but didn't turn, just held her hand tighter. That evening, back at the ranch, Emma stirred broth at the stove. Her heart raced. The words she wanted to say stuck inside, like thorns. George came in, dusting off his sleeves. He put a small wrapped bundle on the table. "What's this?" she asked, not turning. "Just something from the store," he said. She opened it. Inside was soft, old ivory lace. "For me?" George nodded. "Thought it'd look nice on a dress." She turned to him. The room went still. "For what kind of dress, George?" His eyes met hers, steady. "Whatever kind you'd wear standing next to me. For good." Emma's breath stopped. Her hand went to her chest, like her heart might fall out. "I haven't been asked," she whispered, voice thin. He stepped forward, slow, and pulled a ring from his coat. Plain silver, worn, handmade. "I didn't buy you," he said softly. "I brought you here for rest. But now I want to keep you, if you say yes." Her lip shook. Her eyes filled. She covered her mouth, scared her heart breaking open would be too loud. George looked away, unsure. "I understand if," but Emma didn't let him finish. She stepped into his arms, not fast, not dramatic, just like someone reaching land after a storm. She rested her head on his chest and cried, not from sadness or fear, but because he asked, didn't take, because he waited, because he saw her and still wanted her. "I thought no man would ask me again," she said into his shirt. "I'm not every man," George said, his cheek against her hair. Lahi, watching from the loft, ran down the stairs. "Does this mean we're a family now?" George knelt and opened his arms. She jumped in. He didn't answer, just held them both. That night, they sat by the fire. Emma leaned against him, Lahi asleep in her lap. George traced her knuckles with his thumb. "You still sure?" he asked. Emma smiled. "I've never been sure of anything." Outside, the land whispered with wind and new life. Inside, by the soft fire, a family grew, not from blood, but from kindness, steady days, and chosen promises. And though the world outside kept staring, inside that little ranch, love was finally said out loud. The rest of their story waited just outside the door. "Hey, before you go, tell me, where in this big, wild world are you reading from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love knowing how far these cozy stories travel. And if this quiet tale of strength, grace, and new beginnings touched you, leave a word for Emma, or for the kind of man who doesn't need to shout to be heard, who stays gentle and true when it counts. If you believe in love that grows slow, in homes built on healing, not rushing, then like, comment, and subscribe. More Wild West stories are coming, and the next one might be the one your heart's waiting for.